This episode is brought to you by Ivory Tree Portraits, where photo sessions are fast, fun, and totally kid-led, because when kids lead, magic happens. On April 26th, join them for a one-day-only Mommy and Me charity event at their Wayne and Newtown studios. For just a $75 donation, you'll get a 10-minute session and a digital image, all benefiting the Kin Wellness and Support Center, which supports Bucks County families facing cancer. It's an easy way to give back, capture beautiful memories, and support a powerful cause. Book now at ivorytreeportraits.com. Spots are limited. Welcome back to the Running Wine Mom podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Cieslinski, aka the Running Wine Mom. Today we are discussing a topic that affects so many families but doesn't always get the attention it deserves: sugar, childhood obesity, and how we can set our kids up for a lifetime of better health. I'm beyond excited to welcome today's guest, Dr. Michael Goran, one of the world's leading experts on childhood nutrition, obesity, and the science behind sugar's impact on our kids' health. He's a professor, a researcher, and the co-author of the eye-opening book, Sugarproof: The Hidden Dangers of Sugar That Are Putting Your Child's Health at Risk and What You Can Do. Dr. Goran's research explores the gut microbiome, metabolism, and how the food industry plays a major role in shaping what kids eat and what parents can do to take back control. In this episode, we're uncovering the hidden sugars lurking in everyday foods, exploring how sugar affects kids' weight, behavior, and even brain development. Plus, we'll talk about how parents can make realistic changes without feeling overwhelmed or guilty. We'll also tackle big questions like, are artificial sweeteners really better? How can schools and communities support healthier choices? And most importantly, how do we find balance without making food feel like the enemy? So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Goran. Welcome.
Thank you, Samantha. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
I am so excited to talk to you. Before we get into all of the sugar talk, we start each episode with our wine, and win of the week segment. I don't know, is wine okay for the sugar conversation? I guess we'll find out. We share our favorite bottle of wine, bet about something that has been bothering us, and celebrate our recent victories. So grab a glass, take a deep breath, and let's get started. So, Dr. Gordon, what is your WINE of the week?
Cheers.
Cheers. Yes, cheers.
Well, I just made myself a cup of genmaicha tea. I'm very into Japanese green tea of different varieties: sancha, genmaicha, matcha, hojicha. So I'm not a huge wine drinker. I like sake.
Ooh,
Yes, which is my favorite. I don't drink a lot of alcohol.
for the better.
Yeah, I mean, not for any bad reason necessarily. It's not like I'm a recovering
No, yeah.
alcoholic or anything. I just realized it was not making my body feel good the next day. But I have discovered recently some great new, non-alcoholic beverages, like some of the new non-alcoholic beers I've been trying are really good.
Have you tried the Athletic Brewing Company?
I did just have one of those. I was about to say, yeah, just by accident because for our Christmas holiday gathering with my team, we went to a brewery and they had the whole range of those, and I had their stout, and it was really good. I ended up buying like a 6-pack to take home.
Yeah, their stuff is really good.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah. So what is your wine, WHINE of the week?
I have a lot. I don't know how political we want to get, but
Oh gosh.
probably don't need to open that Pandora's box. I could whine about the weather, but we're very grateful for the rain today in Los Angeles, so I'm not going to whine about that.
Yeah. Okay. And what about your win?
I'm always celebrating my team. I have such a fantastic team of people that on Thursday's my day of work. So I usually work at home, but on Thursdays I'm at the office, which I get to see everybody in person. And I just have such a fantastic team of people that are working with me. They make my job easier, seem easy because they do all the hard work and I just have to show up and cheerlead the traffic and come up with the funding to get the projects done. But I'm so grateful for everything they do.
That's wonderful. And having a great leader is the most important part of having a good team, I think. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, they
A
call
great reflection of yourself.
me El Jefe.
Well, that is definitely a compliment. You're clearly a great leader. That's amazing. I always like to ask my guests, what is one significant challenge you've successfully navigated to shape your journey to where you are today?
Wow. Yeah. Well, I think I would maybe have two. Like, I mean, the funding challenges in this business is I've been doing it for 35 years. It's been feast or famine, and we've gone through long periods of not being funded and long periods of having a good amount of funding to get the work done, and keeping the funding and the studies afloat and the team afloat to get this research done consistently over 35 years. That's been a huge challenge. The book in itself was a challenge, many years in the making. It was published in, in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. We had written it the year before, but it took a year to get it published. But just getting to that stage was the huge challenge. And then we had the challenge of the pandemic timing when it came out.
Yeah, to get at that point, everyone's like, we're just eating what we we can do to survive, and to comfort them. I feel like there was a lot of comfort eating in the
Yes.
pandemic times. Right?
Yeah. It wasn't the best timing to, you know, talk to people about what they should and shouldn't be eating. Healthy
Yeah,
was just a pure survival period.
for sure. So the running wine mom, we talk a little fitness. What is your favorite way to stay active?
I'm an avid tennis player. I do work out with a trainer once a week. I should probably do it more, but I get on the tennis courts as often as I can, which isn't enough. Twice a week, sometimes three. I look forward to days when it can be more than that. Yeah, I love the sport. I think it's a great physical challenge, mental challenge, and it's social challenge too.
Yeah, in my classes, I teach high school health and phys ed as well. I have really leaned into the racket sports, tennis, badminton, and pickleball is all I've been really teaching this year, just because I feel like it's such a lifelong sport, and I want the kids to find a joy for it. So when they're, 20, 30, 100, that they could be playing it. So,
Yeah,
so
people who play racket sports have an average life expectancy of 10 additional years.
wow, that's great to know.
The pickleball players, just please leave some courts for
I
us.
know, they're taking over.
I was at one club the other day playing a match. They can get four pickleball courts on one tennis court and
Yeah.
keep them occupied. The number of, I think it's incredible how popular it's become, and just the ability to get people out on the courts is just phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, yeah, my brother is in his 20s and he plays, and my parents are in their 60s and they play. So it's, it really is just such a great thing for people to be doing. And what do you think the relationship between mental health and physical health is? How do you feel like maintaining your fitness routine contributes to that?
Well, for me, I think it contributes a lot. I mean, as soon as I hear that tennis ball being passed around, I feel like my body relaxes and my mind empties. And then once I'm on the court, I mean, everything just turns off. I'm just thinking about the tennis, really. So I think just for me, it's a space just to focus on one thing, and all the other worries just kind of melt away for a while.
So now let's get into a little bit of parenthood. Can you tell us about your family?
Of course, yeah. I mean, those you asked about wins and challenges. I have two girls. They're both in college, so we survived. I don't know where the 20 years went, but kids have come and gone, and that's just been just incredible to think about how fast that went. They're both now in college, and it's kind of me and my wife are entering this new phase, and kind of trying to like adjust to.
Yeah. So the quiet, probably.
It's quiet. The nutrition, I mean, how we our eating is changing and adjusting. That's kind of been interesting. Yeah, but we're both busy working away and just trying to enjoy the time. Looking forward to the next time we'll see our kids.
Well, that's great. So looking back, what do you think that you were least prepared for in parenthood?
I think the teenage years probably. I mean, the younger year. I mean, there was no preparation for any of it really, was there?
Yeah.
But when the kids were young, it's just fun, and you're like running on adrenaline and excitement, and it's fun. But I think things got a little challenging in the teenage years. Plus, in the midst of that, we had the pandemic.
Hmm.
My kids were in high school during that period. That was tough. But I tell you, what's really great, somebody was asking me about this the other day, and I think what's really gratifying is that even though there's challenges with parenting teenagers and you don't feel like you're getting anywhere and just getting a lot of eyebrow raising and sullen looks and people not listening to you, it's very gratifying because I think what I'm noticing, my wife is noticing too, that you get, first of all, your stock goes way up.
Yeah.
So appreciated as a parent once they leave the nest. It's
Hmm.
just incredible. So you're suddenly like super appreciated, and I think it's gratifying to see them find the things that you were trying to tell them about. Like the other day, we were laughing. My younger daughter calls us up out of the blue and says, "I have news, guys. I went to the gym today." The number of times we must have like tried to tell her to like go exercise, be fit, it would be good for your mind and your stress and your anxiety, and it just fell on deaf ears. But now, suddenly at college, has discovered that going to the gym is kind of fun, and that was very gratifying.
Yeah. I still remember my freshman year of college calling my parents and just saying, like, I just need to thank you for everything that you did because I was probably very tough in high school, but like the minute that you're away, you do really, it's like this light switch that goes off that you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe how wonderful my parents really were and they prepared me.
Yeah, so stick with it. You're not going to get a lot of gratification. I mean, more definitely if your kids are younger, then there's gratification like goes way down and respect and appreciation goes way down. But it kind of like bounces back up.
Good, good. It's like the toddler years are like up top, and then as they get into like the, preteen and teen, it's down, and then when they leave, all right, it's like a little roller coaster. I'll be ready for it.
Long drawn roller coaster.
Yeah. So what do you think your parenting style is?
My wife and I differ on that a little bit. Maybe the balance is good. I'm a bit more like a bit more distanced and providing the safety nets and the environment and but not like was never like on top of people. I kind of shied away from taking on issues and getting into stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more of an avoider.
Especially with girls. It's hard.
Yeah, I was going to say, and maybe I had an excuse for that in that dealing, talk with girls, it was a little harder and it was easier for my wife to talk to my girls about whatever it was that they were struggling with.
And what is one piece of advice that you would give to other parents?
Hang in there. As we say in tennis, one shot at a time or one point at a time. It's it's a long process, and you might not win every point. Federer, one of the most successful tennis players in history, who won record numbers of championships, won 53% of his points.
Wow. Wow.
Um, I find that fascinating.
That is
You
very
don't have to win every point as a parent, right? But if you have the overall eye on your prize and the overall strategy, you'll be successful in the end if you believe in your vision. But you don't have to win every point.
great advice. I love that. All right, let's transition right into the sugar. As a mom of, I have a 4-year-old and a 2.5-year-old, I am in the thick of
Like,
childhood. And like it's Valentine's Day, for example. I was just thinking today, my daughter comes home with a bag of candy and treats, and trying to manage all of it is very overwhelming from the day to day. But what really sparked your interest in childhood nutrition and led you to focus on the effects of sugar on children's health?
it was really data driven. So, I've been doing this research for a long time and trying to understand the nutritional factors that impact health and wellness in the short term during childhood and as kids grow into adults. And, you know, there's not there's not one factor, it's not that simple, but from our research, a recurring factor and a recurring modifiable factor was diet and in particular sugar. And so that's what I started to dig into and finding more evidence and reasons why dietary sugar was something that was adversely affecting kids' health and something that we can do something about.
And the one thing that when I was looking into all of the stuff that you do, one of the, I forget if it's on Instagram or YouTube, but you were saying how we are kind of evolutionary born with this love of or enjoyment of sugar, but it's more for like us to enjoy the breast milk. And then as time has progressed, it has turned into something totally different. Can you kind of maybe expand on that a little bit about how kind of dangerous that has become?
Yeah, it's really it's a protective um, mechanism, the preference for sweetness that was evolved not just to like breast milk, but also to avoid food that might have spoiled, because we didn't have food preservation and fridges and freezers and all that. So we had to learn how to avoid spoiled foods. And it's really kind of backfiring in today's food environment. And I think it's pretty clear. I mean, I don't know if I could prove this in a court of law, but food companies know this and design foods to make sure kids will latch on to their products. And they make them sweeter because they know kids have a higher sweet preference. And then they get hooked or addicted, and the process continues. And so it's really backfiring in today's food environment where more than 70% of packaged foods have added sugars and are made to be sweet.
Huge number. So can you explain the concept of being sugar proof and what motivated you to write this book?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was really all the data, not just from our research, but from other people too, that was emerging, and this very clear story kind of came to mind. And the reality is, very few people actually read the research papers, and people that do are just reading them to justify their next study. And I thought that what we were doing was highly relevant and important information to translate to parents and families and kids and teachers. And so that's why I wanted to write the book. My book editor kind of drummed into me the idea of writing a book under the kind of mantra of news that you can use. Every sentence I wrote, she would say, well, how's this useful? What's the news I can use from this piece of information? So that was kind of the driving force. And Sugarproof came about because our philosophy is not like many people's philosophy, which is to say that you should not eat any sugar. I just don't think that's an achievable, sustainable goal. And I enjoy eating and I enjoy the pleasure of eating. So I don't want to give up all sweetness. And Sugarproof came from the concept of, let's say people are familiar, your listeners are familiar with baby proofing, right? When you brought your baby home from the hospital, you baby proofed your house because the environment of your house might not have been safe for your kids. So you plugged the electrical outlets, you put a barrier up at the stairs, and you made it safe for your kids to kind of explore and learn. And Sugarproof is the same. We have this environment, sugar is, pouring down on kids every way they turn: school, grocery store, home, birthday parties, Valentine's Day, Halloween, Christmas, Easter,
Never ending.
never ending. But the question is, how can we sugarproof our environment so that we don't have to not bring our baby home from the hospital or not take our kid to the beach? We sunproof our kids at the beach. So
Yep.
how do we make the environment safer for kids, and so that they can be brought up to learn what's a healthy amount of sugar that they should be eating?
Yeah. And so there is a lot of conflicting information about sugar. And, you're saying moderation is key, and others, they do argue that complete elimination is something that we need to have. What do you think the biggest myth about sugar is that you'd like to debunk to kind of give parents a little bit more comfort in, okay, my kid can have sugar sometimes, but we don't have to completely wipe out our cabinet after listening to this episode?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just a big danger of kids backfiring against that and kind of being like, if being having food be demonized. And really, I think sugar and food can be addictive. It is true there is an addictive element, but I think there's also a fact that we need food to survive, and it's hard to get away from. And there's also an important cultural aspect, especially for kids, but also for adults, in enjoying the pleasures that food can bring us, not just when we eat it, but just when we come together socially to eat it or celebrate, whether it's Valentine's Day or Easter. So I think the goal is not to cancel Easter or Valentine's Day or Halloween. It's figuring out how we can make it work for us so it doesn't derail our health.
Yeah. So let's get a little bit deeper into the science of sugar and health consequences. So something that I'm completely fascinated by is the gut microbiome. I learned about that probably maybe like 7 to 10 years ago. I had never heard the word before it. And I think a lot of the listeners probably maybe haven't heard of it either. So could you first describe maybe what it is and how sugar consumption influences it and what implications it has on childhood obesity?
Yeah, sure. So all of us have a health, a population of bacteria that lives in our body, predominantly in our gut, but also in our saliva and other parts of the body. And it's for the most part, these bacteria offer a healthy function to the body. They metabolize, so they live off of some of the food in our that comes into the gut and process it and eliminate it. But that gut microbiome um, can become repopulated in different ways. For example, if you take an antibiotic, it will kill off some of your gut bacteria and other harmful bacteria may grow. And food can affect the diversity of the gut microbiome also. And our research has shown that, just also as background, we also know that the diversity of individual people, everybody has a different makeup of their bacteria, but that composition is established in early life. So it's driven by early life experiences, such as breastfeeding versus formula feeding, and even to C-section born versus vaginally born children can start off with a different microbiome, which tends to neutralize and normalize over time, but then can be affected by the food that we eat.
Yeah. That was going to actually be one of my questions about the that it's starting in birth because well I was a breech C-section baby and both of my children were C-section babies because my daughter was breech and my first was breech and I was just curious about the mic I've heard a lot of different research on if you do have a C-section the microbiome might not or the gut biome or microbiome might not be passed as easily as a vaginal birth
Yeah,
or
it's
passed
definitely
differently.
it definitely affects the makeup of the gut microbiome at birth. But studies, including studies that we've done, show that kind of becomes equivalent. It normalizes. They become similar within the first year or two. But I mean, but other studies are doing interventions to, for example, to repopulate C-section microbiome using, for example, vaginal swabs. Um, that those types of studies are ongoing. But my read of the literature is that it does have an impact, but other things have a stronger impact that may be more sustained over time.
Yeah. And the gut microbiome also does have a role in obesity. Can you explain how sugar would alter the gut bacteria and how it might contribute to weight gain?
Yeah, the literature on that's pretty mixed. Certainly in adults, there's a pretty mixed literature on the links between gut microbiome and obesity. But there is some evidence in early life that alterations in the gut microbiome could modify growth patterns in early life. But it's not, I wouldn't say it's crystal clear finding. It's still pretty muddy waters.
Yeah. And we also associate sugar consumption with weight gain as well. How does that, in addition to weight gain, how does it impact metabolism and increase the risk for conditions like diabetes, even in kids who aren't overweight?
Yeah, I think the evidence is clearer actually for the metabolic impacts of different sugars on type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease, dyslipidemia, heart disease. That's much clearer. There's a much clearer link there because of the way sugars are metabolized, especially higher amounts of both glucose and fructose sugars, which are the two most common sugars, which when they join together, when glucose joins together with fructose, that's regular table sugar. Both of those sugars are chemically quite similar, but they're handled in the body very differently, and the way they're handled can have impacts on future disease risk.
So, what are some immediate and long-term health effects? We talked about diabetes, but that can be effects of excess sugar intake in children.
Yeah, the most recognizable would be excess weight gain through childhood and into the teenage years. I mentioned type 2 diabetes, which it's increasing, but it's still not pretty, it's not that common in childhood, but it's becoming quite concerning. There may be pre-diabetes. Fatty liver disease is increasing even in children, which is the accumulation of fat in the liver, which renders the liver unable to do its job, which is a critical condition. That's due to excess sugar. But then we also have other outcomes that are non-physical outcomes, such as impacts on learning and academic performance, cognitive outcomes, skin conditions, acne, mental health conditions, ADHD, for example, anxiety, have all been associated with increased sugar consumption in childhood.
All right. So now that we know all about what sugar does, let's talk about what parents can do. What are some strategies? If a child is already consuming a high sugar diet, what do you think the best way for parents to kind of gradually transition them to a lower sugar lifestyle without resistance would look like?
Yeah, there's multiple ways to do that. It kind of depends on a lot of factors, such as how old are your kids, if you think you're going to get buy-in or not. One way to do it, if you think you're going to get buy-in from your family, is even though I said I don't advocate sugar elimination completely, there is some value to doing it for the short term, for say 7 days, just as a way to reset the body. It's kind of like a control alt delete because it resets those sweet taste preferences that we were talking about earlier. And it's a good way for you to find out where all the added sugars are hidden in your everyday products. So that's one way to do it. The other way is to just gradually work on eliminating some of the big culprits, one of which I would guess for most people is liquid sugars, sodas, juices, energy drinks, and so on. Those are probably the biggest source of added sugars, and that you can do by just deciding not to bring them into the house.
Yeah.
That's the biggest
And
thing I can give you right there.
that's so true because we are the ones that are in charge of really the feeding. And I know some parents, after they listen to this, might say, "Well, I don't have enough time. I'm so busy. We have all these events, all these activities and school and work." What advice would you, or what piece of advice would you give to them to kind of get them, help them get on track?
Well, yeah, again, not bringing added sugars into the house is a good one. Probably save you money at the grocery store as
Yeah.
well. Um, your kids will get plenty of opportunities outside of the house to get those products. So I think it's to do with here to address this issue is what you're buying at the grocery store and bringing into the house, which is what you're spending time doing that anyway. So, and you're spending time cooking and preparing food. So just spend a little bit of extra time trying to make sure that next time you need a jar of peanut butter, buy one that doesn't have added sugars or ketchup or yogurt. There's even bread. All these packaged foods, 70% of all packaged foods have some type of added sugar, but that's what we call hidden sugar. That's not really necessary. There's plenty of alternative products that you can kind of gradually transition towards.
Yeah.
And that's just part of your everyday job as a
Yeah.
as a parent and buying food and bringing it into the house just right there.
Yeah. And as we mentioned, sugar is tied to comfort, to celebration, to emotional reward a lot of times as well. How do you think that parents can help shift their kids' mindset about sugar to help them understand it's okay to have, but also don't make it feel like it's a punishment if they do have it?
Yeah, there's all kinds of tricks and tips that we talk about for doing that in the book. Again, it depends on how old your kids are and the situation. For example, at Halloween, we talk about the switch witch. We can do something similar at Valentine's. You know, the switch witch comes at night. The kid can collect the candy because that's a lot of fun and everybody enjoys it. And we don't want to ruin everybody's fun. But then you come home and you say, okay, how many bits of candy do you want to keep out of this huge mountain? And they might surprise you and say, I'd like to keep 10 pieces. And you're like, okay, great. Let's give the rest to the switch witch. And so the switch witch comes along that night, it's kind of like the tooth fairy, and takes away the excess candy and leaves a little toy or present or even just a little card of gratitude or love or whatever you think your child will appreciate. So
I
there's
love
things like
that.
that you can do, or if you're going to a birthday party and you know that it's going to be a sugar fest, try to get your kids to have something healthy in their stomach, a nice snack or meal before they go, so they're not going there hungry and ravenous and eating everything up without thinking about it.
Yeah. Great advice. And in your book and on your website, you have the breakfast bonus guide, and that highlights that there's a lot of common sugar traps in morning meals. What I also saw, I think it was on your Instagram, the 5-minute meals, which I thought were for breakfast, which were really great. What do you think are some quick and nutritious breakfast swaps, or your favorite quick and nutritious breakfast swaps that kids will enjoy?
Yeah, and I'm happy to share that with your listeners, by the way. It's a free PDF that we have available that has 101 different tips for breakfast, depending on how long you have, because we know, well, it's long gone for me, but I remember when my kids were little, it was
It's so crazy.
a big rush. You have to get everybody ready and out the door quickly. So
Yeah.
things have to happen quickly. So yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just kind of possibly just adapting what you're already doing. So, for example, if you're a toast person, like I sometimes are, I love a nice piece of toast in the morning, but I'm, making sure it's kind of a decent bread to begin with. It doesn't have added sugars, and I don't put jam on it. Maybe I'll just put the butter or smash a banana on there or an avocado or even some yogurt. A lot of the times it's just small kind of tweaks to what you're already doing to transition away from sugar to something that's more protein, more fiber, because that's going to keep your kids satiated for longer during
Yeah,
it.
perfect. And I will share that and I'll link it as well. That'll be great for I know so many people in my life need it, and I'm sure most of the listeners do too. Ideas are like the trying to figure out what to do for breakfast is always the the big one, and then trying to get them to eat it is always in a timely manner is always
Yeah,
difficult. Yeah. So let's talk about a little bit with community and policy. I work in a school and I see some of the way that the school lunches are. I need to know, what role do school and communities play in shaping children's dietary habits and how can they really help support healthier choices? Because sometimes also this might be like the healthiest meal that some of the kids get, and depending on where they are, what their economic statuses as well. So, what do you think that schools and communities can do to kind of help?
yeah, I think that's a big issue. If schools together is probably one of the biggest restaurant chains in the country, right?
Yeah.
They're providing a lot of food for a lot of kids. And I've done some work with an organization called Eat Real.
Mhm.
Eat Real has a terrific program where they work with school districts to help them transition their meal system to meet their guidelines. And it's, you know, it's a process that can take a year or two, and it requires buy-in from school leaders, obviously, to make that happen. That might not be happening in your school, so sometimes as a parent, you have to be the advocate. And I've also done some work just with individual schools. I'm going to Austin in a few weeks because I was invited by a school there just to come talk to parents and school teachers on a one-on-one basis to help them modify what they do on a day-to-day basis. And it's not just what they serve in the cafeteria, it's also what the coaches are giving for snacks during football practice, or what
Right.
teachers are giving as rewards to students in class, or how often you can bring cupcakes into class to celebrate a birthday. Again, not to shut down and cancel sugar. That's not the
Right.
goal. The goal is to make the school environment a healthier environment where kids can really thrive, because the evidence does show that the high sugar food environment is not helping them thrive. So we want to try and modify it in subtle ways that can make it a healthier environment, helping them do their best.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, with the sports and activities, a lot of kids are given high sugar sports drinks and snacks. Are they necessary, or are there better ways to fuel young athletes?
I think there absolutely is. I like to use the example of Emma Raducanu. I remember when she won the US Open a couple of years ago as a teenager. She wasn't drinking energy drinks. She was sipping water and munching on bananas. So if you look at what the athletes are doing, very few of athletes, including teenage athletes, are guzzling down energy drinks.
Right.
So I really, that would be a good kind of role model example.
Yeah.
So I don't really get why they have become so popular. I think it's been driven by social media and marketing.
Yeah, I think the marketing, I mean, when you think of Gatorade, you think of an athlete on a court and, or a field, and it's not necessary if you're going out for, a 20-minute jog or, even a 30-minute practice. I think that's where kids see that these athletes on the TV, even though they're not really like the professional athletes in a game or doing it. And that's kind of where it's gotten
Yeah, the
its
problem is these
negative.
energy drinks are, some of them are very high in caffeine, which should not be consuming. Very high in fructose, which is metabolically very problematic, especially for children. So I think there's some issues there. I mean, I can play tennis for over 2 hours just on water.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing that I wanted to touch on is that sometimes parents swap out sugar for artificial sweeteners, thinking it's a healthier choice. What are your thoughts on sugar substitutions?
Not a good idea. I think we're introducing a whole other set of problems, and I do not give natural sweeteners like stevia or monk fruit a free pass. I think they're all kind of come under the same classification, whether they're artificial or natural. It doesn't really matter. Once they're inside the body, your body doesn't know the difference between
Yeah.
natural or artificial. And I don't think we know enough about their long-term effects in children. I don't think they taste particularly good.
No, I haven't had any in a long time, like years, but I remember I'm like, it doesn't even taste like sugar.
So why would we ruin the taste of food that we're supposed to be enjoying,
Yeah.
when also those compounds also do have effects in the body? They're not inert compounds. They're active in the body in different ways. One of which is they actually do not slow down the consumption of.
Hmm.
Studies have shown that children or adults who habitually consume sweeteners, at the time they're consuming it, it's less calories. Sure, if you drink a diet soda, you've just consumed 50 grams less of sugar for that 20 minutes or whatever. But studies have shown that over the course of a day or a week, even if you're habitually consuming diet soda, you end up consuming more sugar or more calories throughout the day.
Interesting. So, what policy changes or public health initiatives do you think could make a significant impact on reducing childhood sugar consumption?
Great question, and we're going to see what happens now that we have a new HHS secretary who is supporting food policy changes along those lines. What would I like to see? One thing we're working on is infant formula and early feeding because I think we kind of have overlooked that a little bit recently. Infant formula is necessary, but I don't think we should be putting corn syrup in infant formula.
Right.
But 50% of infant formula is made with corn syrup, not lactose, which is the only source of energy sugar in mother's milk. I don't think we should be using SNAP dollars to purchase sodas. That's a huge amount of money every year that supports the food and beverage industry and promotes type 2 diabetes, and healthcare costs get driven up.
Hmm.
I think we need to address that. I think we do need to have better school meal standards that should be serving actual food.
Yeah. Yes, please. Some of the stuff, I mean, I don't walk in my cafeteria much, but when I do, I'm like,
Yeah, I mean, need to serve actual food to actual kids who need food to thrive. I think the food subsidies are all messed up. We should, we ought to have better subsidies for farmers and for growing healthy fruits and vegetables.
yeah. Well, hopefully those will come in with some changes. I don't know. We'll see. I think something needs to be done just because it's, again, as a phys ed teacher, seeing a lot of the high school kids not, I mean, being obese, but like not being able to move the way that they should be able to move in their youth is hard to watch. And, they're coming in with Takis in the morning and energy drinks, and that's what their breakfasts are. So I know that, I can imagine what their lunches and dinners are. So it's hopefully some policy changes will come into play where at least if they're choosing a junk food, it will be a cleaner junk food,
As we
maybe.
as we say, quality junk.
Yes, quality junk. So you have given us so much information. If there was one takeaway you hope every listener walks away with after hearing this conversation, what would it be?
I keep coming back to the tennis analogy. I'm sorry, just like
Okay.
this. One point at a time, and it's the same for addressing this issue as a parent or as a teacher or whatever. It's one point at a time. As I said earlier, you're not going to win all those points. That's okay, but it's not like you have to make a drastic wholesale overnight change. That's probably going to not work anyway. But so just take on small issues one point at a time and one day at a time, and have your eye on the final.
Awesome. Well, that's going to be a great way to wrap it up. This will bring us to the end of another episode of The Running Wine Mom. What an eye-opening conversation. I don't know about you, but I'm walking away with a whole new perspective on sugar, the gut microbiome, and how small changes can make a huge impact on our kids' health. Dr. Goran, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and giving us steps we can actually use in our day-to-day lives. Thank you so much for that.
My pleasure. Really, thanks for getting the message out there and doing
Yes.
everything that you're doing.
Yes, thank you. And of course, if you want to learn more, be sure to check out Sugarproof and visit Dr. Goran's website, www.drmichaelgoran.com and sugarproofkids.com for more resources, research, and tips on reducing sugar in your family's diet. And I will link all of that. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it. You can follow me on Instagram at the Running Wine Mom _ and Dr. Goran, where else can the listeners find you?
We do have an Instagram account. I'm not posting there too much, but we have a huge feed of information on there at Sugarproof Kids on Instagram. That would be our main channel where we were posting daily for many, many years. So we're on pause right now, but the information's still out there.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, you are strong, you are capable, and you are all amazing. Until next time, keep running, keep sipping, and keep embracing the joy of parenthood. Cheers. And I will be back next Tuesday. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank
Cheers.
you.